Hi there. Today I want to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It's something I wrote about in my book, kind of a thing, a paradigm that I feel like I sort of channeled in a way as a result of the way that I've worked here in my office here for the last 20 some years, which is that this moment that happens, the magical moment of conception, the magical thing that happens when sperm and ovum meet and create what I would call an energetic blueprint that serves as a blueprint for what our cells are going to turn into and where they're going to go, and it turns into us. It's the blueprint for creating us. It's a translational matrix that turns raw life force energy into these bodies, and these are not just physical bodies, they have a soul, right? When we look at the world in that way, as opposed to, conception and development being this just sort of biological process, there are some conclusions that get drawn. There are three conclusions that I would draw about the nature of nature. One of those is that, the first of those is that actually energy is primary and matter is secondary. That there is a sort of continuum too, that there's a continuum, a relationship between the physical world and the spiritual world. And three, that there is an intelligence that is inherent in life that is sort of in the background of all of this, that sort of animates all of this. So I'm going to be talking about those things in this video. But before we get there, I'm Dr. Jay Eaker from the Bio-Soul Integration Center in Louisville, Colorado, and I've been helping people embody their soul's gifts and their soul's essence. I've been helping them on that continued journey of that sort of, translation of life force energy through these physical bodies as in the expression of soul essence that happens through these physical bodies. Helping people realize themselves as that, helping them have a direct experience of that, helping them embody their soul's gifts and their soul's essence and expressing them through these bodies. So if you find this video interesting, useful, please like it, please share it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll see it here on YouTube for sure. You might see it somewhere else, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Do the social thing there. I've written a book called If It Didn't Hurt, How to Resolve Your Pain and Discover Your Life Purpose. You can find that on my website at biosoulintegration.com. You can find this in audio podcast form if you're into audio podcasts. I have an online course that helps you embody your soul's gifts and your soul's essence. I do online work with people all around the world to help them do that. So there's a lot of resources connected to this video. So, but enough of my commercial, let's get into this topic of the energetic blueprint that happens during conception when the sperm and ovum come together. Again, we would read your science book, you read your biology book, would lead you to believe that that is a purely biological process. I'm not even sure what that means. A process devoid of spirit, I guess. Just a mechanical unfolding, a cascade of chemicals and matter and DNA that is void, of spirit, of energy, of soul. And the medical world in general, the mechanistic scientific world tends to see the world through that lens, just like you would if you wanted to know how a clock worked, you would take apart a clock and look at all the parts to know what made it tick. Well, likewise, the modern scientific world tends to want to look at human beings that way too. They want to like break down all of the pieces and parts to figure out what makes this tick, as if it's the mere connection of all of these cells and all these pieces of physical matter that create the consciousness, that create the light that is emanating from each of us. You know, like what is powering this meat suit? There's a light inside of here, a consciousness, an intelligence that animates this and runs the whole thing, that allows us to take physical matter in the form of food and turn that into the us, and that takes in sunlight and does things with that, and water, and allows us to do, you know, make art and cars and heal, help other people heal, and, you know, all the things that these amazing human bodies do. What is powering all that? I'm not plugged into anything. There's no sort of external power source. It's like we are soaking in an intelligence that is expressed through these physical forms. An intelligence, a consciousness, if you will. So that's the paradigm that I'm sort of looking from my experience and the way that I've been working with people these last 22 years. That is the sort of paradigm, the lens that has, I guess, you know, fallen on me, that has dawned on me. And with that in mind, when seeing through that lens, when I think about the moment of conception that happens in the womb, I mean, first of all, a womb, you know, looking through this lens is like a womb is like this portal. It's a portal from, you know, it's a spirit world portal. It's like a transporter, like on Star Trek, except for it transports people from the spirit world into this physical realm. You know, and there's this magic moment when ovum and sperm meet. What happens there? Something happens. Is that a purely biological process? I don't think so. I don't think it can be. That doesn't make any sense to me. What makes sense to me, and I guess the question that I ask is like, how do each of, okay, so sperm and ovum meet, sperm goes into the ovum, and then boom, something happens in there. And the cell is fertilized, and that cell starts to divide, and it divides again, and it divides again, it divides again, divides again, and it keeps dividing until there are, you know, hundreds, thousands, millions, trillions of cells eventually. But in the early stages of that process in the womb, those cells start to kind of congeal into a form pretty early on. Pretty early on, some of the first things, forms, the first structures that develop are the primitive spinal cord and brain, stomach, which I'll be talking about here in a little bit, I think. The gut, the spinal cord, the brain, the what's it called? Our brain and our brainstem. Brainstem is what I was trying to come up with. But those structures start to form early on, very early on in that process. So how do the cells know where to go? They, you know, a cell, when a cell is created, how does that cell know to migrate to the right position in this structure, and also those cells start to become different things. They become spinal cord tissue, they become skin, they become eyes, they become toenails, you know, like how do the cells know where to go and what to turn into? Modern science would say something to do with our DNA. There's probably some, in embryology, you know, some fancy word which is supposed to describe how that happens. But in my way of thinking, what makes sense to me is that there is this energetic, in the moment of conception, when sperm and ovum meet, there is a window in the space-time continuum that opens up. Inside that window is inserted this energetic blueprint, this translational matrix, this intelligence grid. And it forms first. And then it's what tells the cells where to go and what kind of cells to turn into. It is the intelligence that animates that. I mean, the intelligence that runs this thing is immense. The amount of activities, the amount of, trying to look for a computer term, the amount of processes that are going on at any one given time that all have to be coordinated just so to allow us to live. I mean, it's unfathomable. There's a massive intelligence at work behind that goes far beyond our mental intelligence. If I had to use my mental intelligence to sort of like manually, you know, regulate my blood pressure and turn my food into me and regulate my body chemistry and send this neurotransmitter over here and blah, 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 blah. You know, how long would that, no, I would fall apart. We'd be dead if we had to manually do that. There's some intelligence running that. So this energetic blueprint, this translational matrix, this intelligence grid that forms at the moment of conception, window is opened up, energetic blueprint forms. It's a combination of earthly DNA, the information from earthly DNA, which carries with it all of the information that tells this thing that a human being that will work on this planet with all of the information from uploaded from millions of years of survival of different species packed into it, instincts, all from our ancestors, etc., from information from our DNA, how to a living thing that will live on this planet carries with it the information of this planet. Because I don't know if you believe in extraterrestrials, I would imagine their DNA is specific to their planet, something to do with the planet. It's tied into the planet. That's my sense. And so it's a combination of our DNA from the planet and then our soul essence from the spirit world. Those two things come together at the opposite ends of this whole. That's what's holding the ends of this energetic blueprint together and feeding it. And the raw life force energy that passes through that is imbued with the intelligence that is necessary to build and run and maintain and grow these bodies. My sense is that energetic blueprint becomes it stays with us throughout our lives. It is the energetic fields, the fully formed energetic fields that we have as adult humans In many traditions, they talk about different forms of intelligence that surround the body, whether you want to call that energy or what. Physical fields, emotional intelligence, mental intelligence, soul intelligence, different layers of energetic systems, chakras, in different traditions talk about this energy body that surrounds and interpenetrates these bodies. That is the result of this energetic blueprint that is created in the womb at conception, becomes the fully formed energy body, adult human energy body over time. So it develops over time. What else do I want to say about that? I think that is a picture of this idea I have about the energetic blueprint that forms us. So, what does this say about the world? If that's true, and I believe it is true. Again, modern science tends to look through a certain lens, a mechanistic lens that says it is the putting together of all of these parts that creates consciousness. Although, there is something called quantum physics, I guess. So there is a level at which science recognizes that, tries to, put a finger on the energetic, spiritual nature of us and life through quantum physics. Standard physics sort of applies to everything that's sort of physical, right? It describes how these physical bodies, particles, interact. But once you get down to the size of an atom, and an atom is said to be made up of protons and neutrons and electrons, and I think often people think, well, are those protons and neutrons and electrons, are they like little BBs? Are they like very small particles? I read in a book called The Dancing Wu Li Masters, which was kind of a layman's book for quantum physics some time ago. And they describe in there that if you take an atom and blow it up to the size of like what's the Broncos stadium, football stadium called here? I'm not a huge sports fan, so I don't even know what the stadium's called. But if you blow it up to the size of like a football stadium, the proton and the neutron in the nucleus would be the size of a quarter or something very small, relatively speaking, a quarter, and the electron, orbiting in the outer shell of the atom would be the size of a pea or something, and that electron would be orbiting at the outer edges of the stadium, while the quarter-sized protons and neutrons would be, on the 50-yard line in the middle of the whole thing, and the electron rotating around, pea-sized, mind you. And just to give you an idea of the actual kind of space that exists in an atom. And on top of that, electrons are not so much physical things, they're more like probabilities. They are measured as probabilities that kind of like pop in and out of existence. They are statistically, statistically sort of exist in this general line of field around the protons and neutrons. But it's more like something that is some energy that is sort of like popping in and out of existence, not something solid. And then on top of that, there's all this space between the protons and neutrons and the electron. And you and I and everything solid in the world is somehow made up of atoms. It's made up of these things that have, on the quantum level, so much space in them. Yet, when we look at it and feel it and interact with it, it seems solid. But in fact, it's mostly space, somehow. So, on the there is quantum, my point was there is quantum physics, which is the, scientific world trying to grasp, maybe, their attempt to sort of grasp what I'm talking about. Because on that small scale, these particles, which aren't really particles, don't behave like particles in the regular physical world. And so they needed a whole other science. They call that quantum physics, because those small particles behave totally differently. So, what was my point? My point is that energy is primary and matter is secondary. Again, the mechanistic sort of thinking world would say, if we put together all this stuff, that's what creates consciousness. But the truth is that consciousness and intelligence sort of pre-existed. And it's the existence of the consciousness and intelligence that made it possible to animate all these cells and put them together in a certain order and structure, and such that it's like consciousness is building these things so that it can be expressed through these things, these physical bodies, these human beings. So energy is primary, matter is secondary. The other thing is that it leads us to conclude is the sort of interconnectedness between the physical and the spiritual realm. Like, we tend to think that, physical stuff is this sort of like consensual reality, all this is reality, and it's separate, let's say, from the energetic world or the spiritual world. And the truth is there is a sort of continuum. It's continuous, the physical world and the spiritual world. They're in constant contact all the time. They're in constant communication. There's a feedback loop between, certainly from the spiritual world through these physical bodies onto this physical plane, and probably vice versa. There's a feedback loop where there's communication, interaction happening between those two realms. And then the third thing is that there is just this intelligence that is inherent to nature. It's been a while since I've talked about chiropractic. The world that I come through is chiropractic. That's how I ended up doing what I'm doing. Although what I'm doing looks nothing like what most people think of when they think of chiropractic. That is the world that I have come through, the chiropractic world. And the crazy people who invented chiropractic were certainly genius on some level, ahead of their time, tapped in, also very dysfunctional. But the guy who invented, if you want to call it seems like a word more like channeled chiropractic. D.D. Palmer was his name. This happened in 1895. In 1895, he had a custodian, the guy who cleaned things up in his office. He was deaf, and D.D. Palmer felt his spine, and felt a bone out of place and racked the bone back into place, and immediately his janitor could hear, and so thought he'd found the cure for deafness, and never cured another deaf person in his life, which is kind of interesting and funny. But he said that, well, there are these 33 principles associated with chiropractic, and the first principle is that there is an intelligence that is inherent to everything, that constantly gives to it all its properties and maintains it in existence. For you chiropractic buffs, I know I'm like paraphrasing, so don't get down on me for my paraphrasing. But there is an intelligence that exists in all matter, which constantly gives to it all its properties and characteristics, thus maintaining it in existence. And that is the idea from which, the paradigm from which chiropractic was born, and certainly the paradigm from which I'm working with this work that I do. And when you meet people with that paradigm in mind, there are amazing sort of healing things that can happen. The matter that makes us up can change in ways that you wouldn't expect, because that intelligence is primary. And just kind of also, that means that everything in existence, not just living beings, have some form of intelligence that maintains them in existence. There's some intelligence that holds the atoms of my stereo together. There's some intelligence that holds, that is imbued within rocks, etc., within Legos. So, to sum it all up, the energetic blueprint forms when the ovum and the sperm meet. It forms this energetic blueprint which translates us into existence, which is a combination of DNA from the earth and our soul's essence. That's what we are. And there are three things that sort of, when looking through that paradigm, that we conclude, which is that energy is primary and matter is secondary, which is that there is an interconnection and continuity between the spiritual and physical realm, and there is an intelligence that exists in all matter, which is constantly giving to it all its properties and characteristics, thus maintaining it in existence. Okay, that is it. So if you found this interesting or useful, please like it, please share it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out my book at www.biosoulintegration.com, my online course, my audio podcast, my hands-on work if you're local, my online work if you're anywhere else in the world. And thanks for listening, and I look forward to helping you express more life in the next video. Have a great day.